So let's going again. Welcome back, and we'll get straight into the next session. Now, the Balmoral Show is Northern Ireland's pinnacle agri-food event with farming, food, and lots of fun at the heart of the action. It's organised by the Royal Ulster Agricultural Society and it's hosted in partnership with principal sponsor Ulster Bank. The show is now in its 155th year, and after many years in Belfast, it now takes place at the Econ Exhibition Centre just outside Lisburn across 4 days in May. Many of you, I'm sure, in this room have visited the Balmoral Show at some stage. I have spent many a year presenting live television from the Balmoral Show, and even though I'm a city girl, I have loved every single moment of it. And in particular, getting stuck in, learning how to shear a sheep, very badly, knowing what to look out for in a prize champion animal, a cow or some livestock, and that was certainly an experience where to look for that. One of the keys of the Balmoral Show is its talent for attracting and also maintaining sponsorship relationships. To share their experiences on that, I'm delighted to welcome to the stage now Rhonda Geary, who is the Operations Director at Balmoral Show, Vicky White, who spearheads the sponsorship strategy, and along with them, please welcome Simon Seaton, who is one of the event sponsors, and he is from Ulster Bank. Oops, sorry.
Donna.
So we're going to have a little chat with the three of us first, and put a few questions to our Balmoral Show team and Ulster Bank team. And really, I do encourage you as much as possible to learn from this group as well, who have been successful in events. Rhonda, let's go first. Explain to people who have not met you before what your role is in staging that huge event, which is Balmoral Show.
Okay, thank you, Donna. My name is Rhonda Geary. I'm currently the Operations Director of the Royal Ulster Agricultural Society. I've been with the Society for over 30 years, with many roles through marketing, working in the King's Hall back in the day, and now in the operations for the event and event director for Balmoral Show. So as Donna said, the Balmoral Show has a very long history. Hopefully most people know that it is run and owned by the Royal Ulster Agricultural Society, which is an agricultural charity in Northern Ireland, and one which has a history dating back many, many years. Although we're having our 155th Balmoral Show this year, we're actually celebrating the 170th anniversary of the agricultural charity that runs the Balmoral Show. So we are steeped in history. And as Donna said, we moved from the King's Hall site back in 2012, and then ran our first Balmoral Show at the Icon Exhibition Centre in 2013. Now, the show back in the King's Hall day, we were on a site, 35-acre site, and in those days our attendance would have been in the region of about 75,000. And making the bold move from Belfast out to Lisburn, we now are a 4-day show, and we're attracting an audience of about 120,000 over the 4 days. So we really had outgrown our site at Balmoral at King's Hall, and thankfully the event has gone from strength to strength out at the new site. I mean, Balmoral Show, as you all know, has agriculture at its heart. It's one of our objectives as a charity is the promotion of agriculture in Northern Ireland by staging events, and Balmoral Show is one of those that we do. The show has many, many supporters, and that's one thing we find as an event. We have over 250 stewards that are volunteers, members of the society, members of the charity that help to put the event on, and people who have expertise in their area, whether it's with cattle, with the equine, with the sheep shearing. The show just couldn't work without those people. We need them all. And our sponsors, as we touched on, Ulster Bank, we've been delighted to have Ulster Bank as our principal sponsor for 15 years now, and that partnership has gone from strength to strength. They've been principal sponsor for 15 years, but they've been sponsor at the event for many years before that as well, and then took on the lead role, really, as it was 15 years ago. and we've worked with them to increase their share of the agricultural market, which was what they came on board to do. And we work with them, whatever challenge, whatever they want to do on a yearly basis. Now we're constantly looking at sustainability of the event, and sustainability is a big thing for Ulster Bank, and we help them with that challenge. We bring an audience to the show, and they use that then as their marketing tool.
Vicky, tell us about your role with the Balmoral Show.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Donna. My name is Vicky White, and I've been working primarily with the Royal Ulster Agricultural Society now. Excuse me, for just over 6 years. I did come from a financial services background that I was in for 25 years, but event planning and organisation is something that I probably did as a hobby and was always something I was very interested in. From a sponsorship point of view, I look after all the sponsorship for the shows that the Royal Ulster Agricultural Society put on. We have our 3 main shows throughout the year, and with Balmoral being the flagship event. And it is my job to source and attract new sponsors, and also, more importantly, maintain the relationships with the existing sponsors that we have. I currently work with around 80 different sponsors, both in a range of affordable options for them. And I think for me, maintaining those relationships is what is key. We have affordable options for all different types of businesses and organisations. And we don't work on a tiered system or try and pigeonhole a sponsor into maybe a gold or a silver package. I think we work on a bespoke, tailored solution for them that we could hopefully provide them with the avenue that they want and make it a win-win situation for both of us.
So you're a good friend of Simon's then. So as principal sponsor, where does Ulster Bank see its role with the Balmoral Show?
Oh, good question. I mean, we've had my earliest memory, I guess, of the Balmoral Show, Donna, was we used to have a permanent hut. Do you remember on the old King's Hall site? So when I first joined the bank about 20 years ago, some of the more senior members of staff would have talked reverentially every year about how they had to quite often climb out of the King's Hall venue around midnight, having had too much to drink when they'd been locked in. So that was my sort of earliest memory of it. But as I say, in 20 or 17, 18 years ago, we took on the a proper sponsorship of it. It is our flagship sponsorship event in the year. There's not too many pillar events in Northern Ireland. I see the Northwest 200s. But there's not too many of those big flagship events. So, as a bank, we're delighted to be involved in it.
So it's a standout event. It's a big landmark event. What do you get out of it as principal sponsor?
So Rhonda and I were chatting about this before. When we entered into this, I think it's fair to say that our sort of biggest local rival, what's now Danske, would have been regarded as the predominant bank for farming 15 years ago. And it is the key sector. Banks reflect what's going on in the broader economy. Agriculture is the key sector in Northern Ireland across a number of business levels, and it was our ambition to grow within that sector. It's a sector we're very happy to bank, and by that generally means lend money to. And so our ambition with Balmoral was to raise our presence within the sector. And that's not a short-term goal, it's very much a long-term goal. And as such, Rhonda and I are sitting here, nearly 20 years after we first signed an agreement. So.
But Rhonda, you must have seen changes in that level of support over the years. And so you have to have good expectations in regard to your sponsors. Sometimes it's not necessarily filling what you need in that demand.
No, and as Vicky said, we make sure our sponsorship packages are all very bespoke to what the sponsor wants. With Ulster Bank in particular, say we were able to give them that platform to make a bigger inroad into the agricultural market, which is what they wanted to do. And that's how we work with all our sponsors. You know, that they usually, we bring the audience to them, give them the platform to promote themselves, and work with them in a bespoke package for win-win for both, really.
Vicky, take us through that process then of, first of all, developing that relationship with the sponsor. We heard a wee bit of that from our speakers earlier, and managing that relationship right through to the event itself.
I think for me, as much as Balmoral Show is a 4-day event, and a lot of my peers and colleagues here will agree, it is a 12-month event. It's not just a case of when Balmoral Show finishes on the Saturday, we down tools. I would really pick up post Balmoral Show. And for me, my first port of call is going back out to my sponsors, touching base with them, thanking them for their support. And that's also my first opportunity to hopefully get them on board again for the following year. So it's always staying in touch. You never drop the ball and you never let those relationships go. I find we've had sponsors probably in excess of 50 years for some of our very long-term sponsors. Quite a few I've inherited, obviously, when joining the business, but there's been plenty more that I've brought on board, and that can come from either my previous networks and stakeholders. I would be very into looking at social media, which we know can work both ways, but it is such a platform for promoting new businesses. And if I see something that I think aligns with our ethos, and maybe there would be an opening, just as has been explained earlier, I would have no hesitation in picking up the phone and saying, I see you've just started up or you're promoting a new business. How can I help you? How can we help each other? So attracting new clients and new sponsors to the show, I suppose also I feel that we're very lucky because the show does sell itself. There's not many avenues that a business or an organisation can come for and get in front of that audience of potentially 120,000 people or more and be able to get that brand exposure and get themselves that platform to promote their business over the 4 days. So I have been very lucky that there's not often that I get much pushback. However, what I have discovered lately is potential sponsors want different things. How times have changed even over the 6 years that I've been there. There's not the surplus funds about anymore that a business can say, look, here's a check, put that back into the coffers. They need to know what's in it for them. They need to see a measurable and a tangible outcome. And especially with sort of the marketing side of businesses, they need to be able to go back to their bosses and say, this is what I've spent and this is the return that I've got for it.
You offer tiered opportunities for sponsors. Are you talking about then maybe bespoke packages?
Absolutely. When I have initial conversations with a sponsor, I want to find out who their target audience is, what they're trying to attract, what their objectives are, and hopefully I can pitch a package to them and make it bespoke and tailored. We do have different offerings that we can do, whether it's a ticket allocation, whether it's branding and advertising, whether they want more PR. So based on those things that I can give them, I need to know what are their priorities. Sometimes I've had clients who simply want to give their staff a day out and they want a ticket allocation. They'll maybe close their site down for a day and let people come to the show. They're maybe trying to launch a new product, so they want to maybe incorporate a trade stand and do some PR and advertising around that and get footfall to their trade stand. Or maybe it's just a case that they want to support our charity and give something back, and like maybe Junction that Ursula was talking about, that they're not necessarily interested in gaining much for themselves, but actually giving back to agriculture. So I try and work, and I think that comes through conversations and being able to send them over a package that hopefully ticks the boxes and get it right first time.
Simon, is there a media effect on sponsorship if you have the BBC, UTV, all the different media, the newspapers there at the Balmoral show? Is that a big attraction for a sponsor like yourselves in Ulster Bank?
It's definitely a factor. It is a factor, and generally what you will find, we will have a PR agency who will help us execute against the sponsorship. That tends to be the headline number that you see played back every year. Will be, what was the level of media coverage? How much was that media coverage worth in pounds and pence? And we can all
Does that also include social media?
It generally will. That tends to get compiled by the marketing team, who will, you may then question the validity of the number that you see. It always seems to be quite highballed, and a lot of people might take that number at face value. In reality, there's a host of factors that go into deciding, whether the sponsorship makes sense or whether it stacks up value wise. But the press is the easiest one to put a number beside.
So therefore, is a financial institution like yourselves and other banks, are they aiming for the big events? What about the smaller community events, the ones that are not as well established as Balmoral Show and don't get the same media attraction?
So, I mean, here's an interesting one. We would sponsor a lot of local marts, local agricultural shows that, hyper local events, very small amounts of sponsorship. There is a lot of business comes off, £500 here, £1,000 there. Balmoral, we don't do a huge amount of business at Balmoral. So if we were to sit and evaluate Balmoral based on how many leads did you get, it probably doesn't stack up. The beauty of Balmoral comes in an array of different things. It's about being a pillar brand. It's about the longevity. It's about being, culturally neutral. It's about giving our staff a focal point. It's about being it sounds terrible, but being a good corporate citizen as a big company locally. There's a lot of things that Balmoral delivers for us very successfully, and over time that sort of ladders up into a greater amount of market share, which pays the bills for us.
Ursula, I think, mentioned this earlier. You put a lot of effort, Rhonda and Vicky, into your sponsor, and you don't really get what you expected from them. Have you had that experience before?
Definitely. I think one thing that I've learnt over the past few years is thinking about what the sponsor wants and the actual cost of what you're trying to potentially get sponsored against the perceived cost to the actual sponsor. So I suppose an example for that would be some of our prize money that we have for our classes. And that prize money, for example, may be £10,000. But for me, for that cost, to get that cost cover, what can I actually give back to the sponsor in relation to £10,000 worth of equivalent benefit? So that's not what it's all about. For me, it's meeting their objectives, it's giving them a bespoke package, and hopefully giving them the platform to promote their business. And that, for me, maintains those relationships. I've turned sponsors down before because I don't believe in just taking money for the sake of money. Maybe that's not something I should tell my boss, but but from that point of view, that open.
It's all part of the managing.
It's open and honest approach. And what I have found is they may have said no this year, or I've actually said, well, no, it's. I find come sort of March time, I touched on earlier that it's a year-on approach for me. A lot of the research I would do July, August time. I would look for new potential contracts. I'd reach out to agencies, that market and that maybe look after some of the big businesses, and because I'm potentially doing their work for them, if I can say, well, look, this is what I can offer. Have you a client that might be interested? So a lot of the research I would do July and August. September to December is probably one of my busiest times where I would get my proposals and agreements and contracts signed off, and then post Christmas break, January, February is where actually the tying up of loose ends goes. We're 12 weeks away from Balmoral Show at the moment. Our entry's actually opened today. We've managed to escape from the office, which is great. But
Is the computer still working with
I hope
anybody
so.
calling?
I hope so. But from that point of view, as we get closer to the show, the value of sponsorship for me diminishes because there's less than I can offer a sponsor. Some of our publications have already went to print, so advertising opportunities have been and gone. So if I have a sponsor that comes to me, for example, middle of April, I would rather put them off and work with them over the summer and focus on the year ahead rather than just take their money for the sake of taking their money. And I find that has worked for me. And now I have the majority, probably at least a good third of my sponsors I have tied in for at least a 2 to 3 year deal, where that is peace of mind for all of us. They can budget ahead, they can plan, and I've got the security there that I know that for the next 3 years they have committed to Balmoral Show.
I suppose in a way you're very fortunate that is the case. I'm
Yeah.
sure that is not the experience of some of the people in the room. Now we're going to throw it open to the floor. Please ask questions of our speakers. No question is too small or too big for them. What is your experience in regard to getting sponsorship? When is the right time? Have you had any particular difficulties? And even though the Balmoral Show is a very large event and has a lot of sponsors, maybe your event is smaller. And definitely, but you need that support and that help from sponsors. Anybody from the floor, if you could put up your hand, and Anne and the team will run the microphone. Just at the, if you could stand up, just introduce yourself to the speakers, please. That would be of help. And there you go.
Hi, thank you. My name is Wendy Gallagher and I'm Project Manager for Bank of Ireland Open Farm Weekend. But what I just wanted to point and what's really obvious here today, which is super, it's really the collaboration, I think, between a lot of different people in the room here. I'm a real fan of Balmoral Show and I've been going there as a child and it's fantastic. And now I work on a really brilliant agricultural event. Our event is a bit different because it's not a commercial event. Pardon me, as such, it's more an educational initiative. But it's wonderful just to have a showcase like Balmoral is amazing for us. And I know certainly from our perspective, it's really interesting to understand how you approach your sponsorship and how you put the show together. Our event is much smaller, obviously, but a big focus on agriculture, which is really important to us. But what's really lovely, and I just want to commend it in the room, is you can sort of see clear links, really good working relationships here between businesses in Northern Ireland, which I think comes across well to consumers. I know that we've heard Food NI, for example, have been mentioned here in the room previously, and Food NI play a huge part in your show as well. And I think that's to be encouraged. The likes of Food NI would sit in our steering group for Open Farm Weekend, so they help guide us, with the event. They give us support and time and resources, and we also get the opportunity to participate at Balmoral, which is huge for us because that gives us a huge platform. Balmoral for us is our tell everybody about our event, encourage people to come in June. So I just want to commend you for the good working relationships that you clearly have built and developed over the number of years. And I think it's a really fantastic flagship. So just thank you. And thanks for your input today and to everyone who spoke. I think it's excellent. It's really helpful.
Thank you very much. A friend or a foe there, Simon?
Very much
Friend
a
or
friend.
foe?
One of our colleagues is an old colleague will know Balmoral very well. Anne Crummy, you see. Yeah, I mean,
Catch up later.
We can indeed.
Anybody else from the floor? If you could put up your hand, anything to do with sponsors, securing sponsors, having that longevity. Anybody from the Northwest? Oh, down there. There you go. And then the gentleman just behind, he'll take the after.
Hi there.
So who are you now? And who do you represent?
I'm Pamela McLean. I'm from Farmflix. We're a company outside Antrim. We're very new, so I feel, we've been running Farmflix for a while, but in terms of events, it's all quite new to us. So we had an event 2019, 500 turned up. Last year, then we had it again with 5,000. So we are growing, but we have a lot of challenges because we're still maybe at that point, for sponsorship where they're kind of wondering what will they get from it. Ours is very much an agricultural audience. There's a lot of men. It's a motorsport event. It's never been done before. In terms of tractors up a track, racing together, different classes. There's a lot of smoke. I was asked about the environmental impacts. I can't really say, I can't really lie. There's Reek, it's called. We're going to have this year the big weekend. So Friday we're going to add in a country concert. Some of my frustrations, I suppose, is in order maybe to get corporate sponsorship, from the council or other things, you need to run at a loss. It's deficit. So that doesn't make good sense to us. We have run at a loss for 2 years, but the third year we can't do it. We're going to increase ticket prices because we need to make money. Otherwise, all the blood, sweat, and tears, all the things with the weather, all those things, just it's really, really hard. So I don't know. We're in that maybe not no man's land, but a middle sort of ground, in terms of the number of people we're getting. We're aiming this year 7,000 on Saturday, 3,000. I don't know if that'll happen on the Friday night. But I suppose I don't know if you have any tips for the likes of us, the little people, the small businesses, how we can secure that funding or that sponsorship. We are pursuing, but sorry, I'm very nervous. I didn't expect my voice to go shaky. But it's just a different impact, We're not having 100,000 people there, that sort of way.
So you're coming, in a sense, from a privileged position that they have tens of thousands of people, well-established event. Yours is a new event. But you've had the numbers through.
Oh, yeah.
How do you convince the sponsors then to help you in that?
Yeah. I think maybe if you look at potentially sponsorship in kind, if you're not getting the sponsors maybe to click on and link onto your event as it's new.
Yes.
Look at the suppliers that you have.
Yes.
Can some of them help you? Can some of them come along, maybe give you some sponsorship in kind that you're not having to pay out for your event, and try and build relationships that way?
Yeah, we have done that a little bit. Like Mur Concrete provided the safety perimeter, and Red Rock helped with bespoke trailers. So we have done that. Yeah, we have. But building more on that, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose as your event grows, that'll give you more, I suppose, more evidence of what the event can offer to a potential sponsor.
Yeah, it's still early days.
That's exactly. I was going to touch on sponsorship in kind is something that we would have probably over £55,000 worth of sponsorship in kind that I would source, and that could be anything from we have about 1,700 bales of shavings that we get supplied free of charge to bed all our stables for the equestrian section at the show. And in respect of that, then they would get to sponsor a class, and they are also the sole provider. Then they can sell shavings to potential competitors. But that's an outlay that we obviously do not then have to fork out, and it saves us probably around £13,000 to £14,000 worth alone. So it is something that you can build on and think of. But I would also say it is a hard slog. I think we all have sort of attained to that today. You don't win them all, and that's absolutely fine. But I am a great believer that people buy from people that they like, and that's building those relationships, and that takes time, and it's not something that's achieved overnight. But if you don't get it 1 year, don't be afraid to go back and ask for it the next. And certainly after your event, that is your hotspot. That's your prime opportunity. If something's worked well for your sponsor, don't be afraid to ask them, well, are you happy enough to do next year as well? Because, nobody is ever, what's the worst they can say to you is no. And, nothing ventured, nothing gained. So I'd be interested to see maybe in another 3 years' time where your journey has taken you.
Yeah, thank you.
And remember, as I said before, there are speakers here and lots of people in the room from all different events who have that knowledge and that experience and that wisdom. And I have no doubt at all, if you approach any of them, that they will have a chat with you to help you along your way, because this is a shared and a safe environment where people are explaining warts and all how they have got on in their events. But thank you for your question. Man behind there, thank you. If you could just introduce yourself, please, to the gathering.
Hi, good morning. I'm Peter from the Irish Football Association. So obviously we would look after the international matches and events there. And I'd be interested to ask the panel, just in terms of, because you have a long-standing partnership and relationship between the sponsor and the venue and the event, how has that relationship developed over the years, in the sense that, Simon, would you have an impact or a role to play in shaping the event, the Balmoral Show, in the future? What do you as a sponsor want to see from the Balmoral Show and from other events maybe that the organisations are putting on? Is there that conversation of, do you bring something to the table before, rather than just the money?
Do you
Yes.
mean the influence of the sponsor as such on the event in general?
I mean, that is a very good question. And for full transparency on my part, I work now in our business. Initially, when we kicked off, I was in our sponsorship team. We certainly had a number of things coming in to the agreement, one of which was banking exclusivity was fairly important to us, given the sums of money. In answer to your question, though, directly, I think key for us, or certainly me looking into it within our organisation, is that there's a sense of evolution. I mean, in the last number of years, it's gone from 3 days to 4 days. It's clearly changed location, as Rhonda's referred to. If there was anything pressing from our point of view, yeah, we certainly wouldn't be behind the door in asking that. But there's a bit of give and take. I think over the years, there's a good working relationship. That's key to this, and continuity of decision makers. And we've been very privileged that the people on both sides are still there. There's a broad acceptance that this is a good sponsorship for all parties, and there's an open dialogue. And even Rhonda and I were saying before that we internally in the bank, we've moved away from having a defined marketing function, and that our parent bank, NatWest Group, tends to drive most of that now out of London. So in theory, there could be a vacuum locally, and that's been filled by our PR agency, who double up as an events coordinator. So provided all parties trust each other and there's regular interactions, the big ticket demands are fairly rare.
Yeah, although I would say, though, over the years, I mean, if the bank has something specific that they want to promote on a year, they will ask us to help and support that. And I think sustainability is one that's coming through with most sponsors nowadays, and they want to see us making changes to our event to become more sustainable and meet their objectives that way.
Any other questions? There we go, down at the back. If you could stand up and introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Jacqueline Morsky. I'm the events manager with Derry Strabane Council. So we deliver 16 events in a year, so very high level events to smaller scale ones. I have a couple of questions. I don't know if the panel will be able to answer them, but maybe others in the room might. But I guess, well, the first one is around, I suppose we're, like other council colleagues, are in a unique position where we don't have an event site, or city is our event site, so we can't ticket events as easily. So we really are relying on sponsorship as an option for, I suppose, bringing in other funding. So we're quite early stages of that. We're not very good at it, to be honest, because we're all busy doing other things. But it's just, how do you start in terms of resources? We don't have full-time people on it. Should you have? It's always part of someone's job. So it's, how much investment do you make? Don't know if you can answer that, but where do you start? And then, I know we're not allowed to ask about money, but I suppose the value...
No, you are here.
Are here. I would love to know the value of your packages in terms of ranges, without divulging what Ulster Bank pay, but just something to give us a sense of, how small is too small, and where could it go to?
Rhonda, in regard to the ticketing, right? How many do you have in your team in regard to organising the Balmoral Show?
For Balmoral Show, it's not a big team. There will be about 8 staff work on the show all year round, and then some of the Icon exhibition staff would filter into that as we get closer.
The first question then about
in relation to ticketing, ticketing is something that we do a lot more of now, and probably since COVID. We've started to We try and push our ticket sales in advance of the show. We still have gate receipts, we've walk-ins, but we've obviously tried to do away with that. We just work with a good ticket provider who we still have to pay a small percentage of our ticket price to manage that.
Do you use Eventbrite or someone else?
We use a company,
Future ticketing.
Future Ticketing. There's quite a lot of ticket providers out there. So we use Future Ticketing, have worked for us. It ties in with the software that we have, and it's worked well for us for the last number of years. And so we're trying our best to do away with so many walk-ins. I suppose it's for advanced planning. It does away with the need for so many cashiers and the whole cash handling thing at an event as well.
So it doesn't take up an awful lot of your time in regard to the ticketing.
No.
You were saying, people are double jobbing, doing 3 things at once. So the
No, it really doesn't.
ease that may offer to them.
Once it's set up, once the actual ticketing process is set up with your ticket provider, they should really take the hassle of that away from you and manage all the ticket sales, send you the money.
Okay, and talking about money, can you answer her second question?
Yeah,
Sorry,
well,
just-
we do have different packages.
I was just going to clarify, it was more sponsorship concentration of that. in
Okay, oh,
terms
sorry,
of-
sponsorship.
As well as, obviously ticketing is something that's
Yes.
Is
down the road,
important.
but it was more about how much of an investment do you put into actually attracting sponsorship and in terms of resources.
Okay, well, it is Vicky's full-time in sponsorship, but she obviously does other things as well. So do you want she obviously has other things to do.
Yeah, well, obviously that's my prime remit is to source and attract and maintain those sponsorships year on year. As Rhonda alluded to, I do have other areas of the show that I deal with, such as show jumping, etc. But from sponsorship, obviously, it's a very busy part. It's so crucial to the running of an event. With ourselves, it's only about sort of around 13% of our income. So as much as that's a very important part, it's still in the overall scheme of things quite a small percentage of it.
Some people may be surprised at
Yeah.
hearing that percentage. They may have thought it was definitely over 50%.
No, our trade stands would be almost 50% of our income.
Yeah.
And again, that's a full-time job in itself, selling the trade stands. We would have probably about 650 trade stands on site at the show.
From a package point of view, we tend to say, and I aim around the £700 mark for our lowest sponsorship. That can go up to our platinums. So as well as our principal sponsor, Ulster Bank, we have the availability of what we call our platinum sponsors, which is our next level down. We have 4 of those at the moment, and they would be our next high level value sponsors. We would never have more than 5 because we would feel it would sort of dilute the benefits that they have. But on average, we're looking at a commitment of around £15,000, and they get some additional benefits and more exclusive rights compared to any other sponsors. But with having your bespoke package, that means you can tailor what that sponsor wants and have a price point that they can relate to. I suppose for me, I have a remit of what I need to get. I'm set a figure that I try to steer to, and it's just under, I suppose, around the £380,000 mark of what my remit is that I try to gauge every year. I've been very lucky that I've met that on most occasions, apart from the year coming out of COVID. At this point in time, I am actually above what I got last year on my figures. And again, as I say, I have been lucky with that because I have a couple of sponsors that I held over from last year that just didn't come to fruition, but they have this year. But I also have the wiggle room that if I feel if I need to do a little bit of discount here and there and negotiation, I would rather bring a sponsor on board and make it work for them, because once they see the benefits that they get from the show, they're more likely to do business with you at maybe a higher level following on. So I think that's why I don't say, well, you need to give me £1,000, you need to give me 2, and you need to give me 3, because once you pigeonhole those figures, it's hard to work around that. But certainly with all sponsors, I can then say, well, that's equivalent to X amount of tickets, or I can give you one advert, or I can give you two. And I think to maintain those relationships, it's making sure that you have not promised something that you can't provide. I would rather go back to a sponsor and say, well, look, would another advert be of any use to you? I have a space here in my catalogue. And I think that, again, builds those relationships and helps them see that we are in it to support them, and it's not just us looking their support. The only other thing I would tag in the back of that, and it probably tags in with the sponsorship in kind, look at the businesses around you and maybe look at the contractors that you maybe deal with. Last year I went out and I looked at our long-standing and our high-valued contractors that we've been dealing with year on year, and I simply said, would you like to give us something back for a change? And I was very successful with probably about maybe 8 or 10 of them actually coming on board and giving us some money back. So we've worked with them and we've supported them, and that was their time to maybe give us something back to us. So I suppose maybe that's just a side of my personality. If you don't ask, you don't get.
You don't get.
And if they say no, that's absolutely fine. But I think it comes back to how you approach it and how you ask.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, our thanks, please, to Rhonda, to Vicky, and to Simon as well. All right, we're just against the clock. Thank you.